Today's video is going to be a little bit of a long one because we're going to be going through my entire Nintendo Switch collection, which, considering the fact that I've owned a Nintendo Switch since a couple of months after launch, is going to be nearly 200 games to get through. Now, admittedly, collecting physical games specifically is something I've only really been getting into in the last few years, especially when I realized how important it is when they started shutting down the eShop for the Wii U and the 3DS just last year. So I've really been making an effort recently to buy all my games physical instead of digital to make sure they can last just a little bit longer. Now, before we go into the games, I thought first of all we should go into which Nintendo Switches I actually own. Now, the first Switch I owned was just the original with the red and blue Joy-Con. Now, I've tried to part ways with this Switch a couple of different times, and honestly, I'm not sure I can. It has a lot of the screenshots on it from my early days in Animal Crossing, hanging out with my friends during lockdown when there was nothing else to do. It's also the reason why this entire channel exists, so it holds so much sentimental value as it literally got me into gaming. But it's no longer the Nintendo Switch I use. And that's because as soon as the Nintendo Switch OLED was released, I managed to get my hands on one of those. Now, I actually don't use this Nintendo Switch anymore, and this has become my dad's Nintendo Switch because I wound up buying the Zelda OLED. Now, I'm going to be honest, the main reason why I purchased the Zelda OLED was literally because I thought the dock was so pretty. Although I must say, I do really like the detailing on the back of the Switch itself, but the Joy-Cons themselves are something I don't actually use, and that is because I bought myself the pastel Joy-Cons, and as soon as I got them, I was obsessed with them. The only thing I wish Nintendo would let us do is to buy two Joy-Cons of the same color, and that's literally the reason why I bought the Princess Peach ones, and I'm very excited to see those arrive, because I just like the way it looks when the two Joy-Cons are the same. And whilst I am glad that they didn't release a Princess Peach OLED, I think that could have been really cute, and I do wonder why they didn't do that. But either way, those are the three Nintendo Switches I own, and then I also have the Zelda Pro Controller. I did have the original Pro Controller, but I gave that to my dad, and I just love the gold details on this one, and the fact that one of the sides is white. The Pro Controller is such an incredible accessory to those of you who play docked. I can't recommend it enough. Now, before we get into just the games, I want to go through some of the collector's items that I've gotten over the years. If it isn't pretty clear by my background, I love getting gaming bits and pieces that aren't necessarily just the game boxes themselves. So that's why I've started buying collector's editions of stuff. And honestly, this is one of my favorites. First of all, the box itself is just stunning. I love the way it looks when I put it on display on the back there. But also the reason I got this is because of the contents. Not only do you get the steelbook, but then you also get these really cool badges. You get the art book as well, and a steel poster. Zelda is one of my favorite franchises. Obviously, I love Tears of the Kingdom, and I am really, really happy with this purchase. Another one of my favorite games is Wildflowers, and they've come out with some really cool bits and pieces because although the game, I don't think you can buy that physically, you can buy little things to decorate your room with. These have to be some of the coolest gaming items I own. I love the paper that they're on. They are also absolutely stunning, and I like the fact that it's not overly obvious that this is from a game. So people who come into your house and see them won't just go, oh my god, there's gaming stuff everywhere, you know? But these aren't actually my favorite things that I own from Wildflowers. I am obsessed with pin badges. I have a lot from my trips to Disneyland. So when I saw these, I was absolutely obsessed. They are stunning. These are the couple that I own. I freaking love the cat. I have a cat that looks just like this as well. And again, I love the fact that they're not abundantly obvious that they're from a game. Like, you can fly under the radar with some Wildflowers stuff. Now, this isn't necessarily an official Nintendo thing, but it is, again, one of my favorite things I have on display. And look, it's a Alolan Vulpix and some cherry blossoms in a pretty giant Pokeball. I wish I had a better place to put this so you could see it better, but I found this when I was at EGX from the artist stands, and I just love it. It's so cute. Alolan Vulpix is like one of my favorite Pokemon, so this was a perfect find. And although this necessarily isn't my favorite Switch game, it's such beautiful artwork. I got sent this from Blanc, and it quickly became one of my display pieces because it's just gorgeous. And inside the box was actually this absolutely stunning ornament. I'm unsure as to whether this ever went on sale, but it's such a cool little item. Another thing I often have on display behind me is this. And this is from Fae Farm. It's like the wand that your character carries around with you. It's such a unique little item. Again, I don't know if this ever went on sale or if this was just sent to creators, but I really do love it. I did have to glue it back together myself though, as customs destroyed it. Now this might be the coolest thing I've ever been sent. This was sent by Epic Games to celebrate the brand new LEGO Fortnite mode. So not only is this a LEGO llama, but it's also a limited edition LEGO llama. And this is actually my very first piece of LEGO. Now I will say I did really like the LEGO Fortnite mode. I thought it was a lot of fun. Not only is it free, but there was quite a lot to do. Although I will say it's in dire need of an update because it hasn't got anywhere near as much content to rival the likes of Minecraft as of yet. So hopefully we get news about some new updates and new stuff coming into it. But yeah, this has been a really cool display piece to have. There is one item I have been desperately looking for and I have been completely unable to get, and that is the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Collector's Edition. I don't normally find myself this desperate to get collector's editions, but Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is one of my favorite games of all time, and I hate how unavailable the collector's edition has been since release. So if there's one item as a brand new collector I'm looking for, it is most definitely that. Next, let's get on to my physical games. But before we do that, I just want to thank today's sponsor, Penny's Big Breakaway, which is a 3D platformer unlike anything you've played before. And not only is this coming out on the Nintendo Switch, but it's also releasing on all other platforms as well. This game will see you play as Penny, who's a street performer armed with a yo-yo. But her dreams of making it big gets cut short, as when she goes to audition as a Palace Court performer, she ends up in a strange encounter with a cosmic string that winds up turning her yo-yo into a living creature. And this yo-yo just so happens to love chaos. But thankfully the yo-yo comes in handy as you find yourself running away from the Emperor's massive penguin army that are chasing you across the planet. And you'll find yourself doing tons of trick shots and chains to try and get away. This is one of those games that's easy to play but difficult to master. But thankfully there are kind of difficulty options. You can either play with simple controls or fully take control of the yo-yo yourself with the more advanced controls. This is a 3D platformer with some serious character, and you can find out more by using my link in the description down below. Next, let's move on to my physical game collection. Now, I will say it isn't as big as I'd hoped it would be. The ease of just being able to buy a game so that you can play it dead on midnight when it releases has trumped physical games in a lot of situations for me. But recently, I've been making an effort to buy physical just because it means you actually own it forever and you can lend it to friends and family as well. So the first game I have physically is Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I don't normally gravitate towards platformers in general, but this was absolutely incredible. It was wacky, it was ridiculous, it was a lot of fun to play, and it did what Nintendo do best and catered for a player of every ability. You can play as characters that don't take any damage if you need an extra hand, you can pick which badge you want to help you out with certain levels, or if you're someone who's really skilled, you can also take on the challenge runs, which are, to me, absolutely ridiculous. I had to accept that some of them I would just never be able to do. This is also a ton of fun to play together with other people as well. Honestly, highly recommend. Then we have Splatoon 3. I'm going to be honest, despite the fact that this is another really solid shooter game from Nintendo, I don't like this as much as I liked Splatoon 2. I can't fully figure out what magical elements Splatoon 2 had that made this just not feel the same. Whether it's the player base that play, maybe I've just gotten worse at the game. But despite the fact that this has really fun three-way splatfests, I haven't found myself dedicating the time or effort to play this that I did for Splatoon 2. It's still really good, just no longer one of my favorites. Then I have Link's Awakening. I feel a little bit bad about talking about this. This was in my video about Nintendo Switch games I regret buying because, like, I liked it. It's just pretty expensive for what it is, and I found myself needing to use walkthroughs. If you're a lover of like old school Zelda games, you'll love this. But if you're someone like me who kind of prefers the more modern take on Zelda, you might struggle with the lack of direction that this gives you. So, good game to have physical. My dad enjoyed it, but this wasn't my favorite game. Then we have Rayman Legends. Now this is one of my favorite games, not because it's necessarily the best game that I own, but because it has a lot of sentimental value. Me and my dad used to spend hours playing this on the Wii U together. It is literally one of the most creative platformers I've ever played, so I could recommend this to literally anyone. The musical levels in this are just fantastic. Like, I could recommend this game just for those. It also has really fun little mini games in it as well that our family has spent tons of time playing. For less than £10, this is a bargain and I can't recommend it enough. I feel like I don't need to spend too long on this. I mean, it's Breath of the Wild. It's so good that I found a second box of this in my house. I only have one copy of the game, so I don't fully understand that, but Breath of the Wild, one of the best games on the Switch. Still one of my top 10 Switch games of all time. I love it to pieces. I'm not sure there's many people left on this planet who haven't tried it at this point, but if you haven't, do it. Speaking of games I love, I also have Kirby and the Forgotten Land. This is another one of my favorite Switch games of all time. This is very similar in vibes of like Mario Odyssey, but to me, I just enjoyed this more than I enjoyed Mario. I think it's all the fun little puzzles that you can do as Kirby by sucking in weird inanimate objects. It just gave me a lot of joy. Is there a big story to it? Absolutely not. It's just so much fun to play. This Kirby game though, less so. I don't have any strong feelings either way. It's fine. It's more of a typical old school Kirby game, so more like a platformer. It has a lot of fun little mini games, which I wasn't expecting to be included with it, but overall, not a game I found myself playing much. My dad, on the other hand, I think had a pretty good time with it though. Fire Emblem Three Houses is another one of my all-time favorites. I had never played a Fire Emblem game before I picked up this one, and this was just the best introduction into the franchise for me. Not only in terms of the story being gripping and incredible, but also in terms of the mechanics. Not only did it have an easy mode if you wanted to use it, but it also had a really good tutorial system to kind of teach you how to fight and how the mechanics work. If you haven't played this and you're looking for a fantastic story, it's worth the risk. Go for it. Then we have Nintendo Switch Sports. It's wild to me how much my opinion on this has changed in the last year. A year ago, I would have said this is probably a solid buy, but after having Christmas and not picking this up at all and playing other Switch games with my family instead, I realized that this wasn't really a game I needed in my collection. This is one of those times where I realized how much age has affected my game preference, because in theory, this offered everything Wii Sports did, and now I mostly play the Switch by myself, so this is just not something that I picked up at all. I love the Octopath Traveler games so much, and I feel like people don't talk about these enough. They're such an overlooked RPG for how good they actually are, but I will say, as much as I love Octopath Traveler 2 is better in every single way. I think the characters are stronger in that game. I think the storylines are stronger as well. That game does everything this does, but better. The stories are better of each of the characters. Their interactions with each other are better. I love 2 more than this, but again, underrated. Some of the best RPGs you can buy on the Switch. I'm not going to count this one because everyone has this physically. The only way to buy this game was to get a physical copy of this game, I think, because you had to buy like the ring and the leg strap with it. So I'm not sure this counts, but I have it. I also have My Time at Sandrock. Now, this is the type of game I need to get better at finding physical releases of. I love indie games, but I have a habit to just buy them digitally, and I need to start looking into buying more indie games physically, because these are such good additions to your catalogue. Now, I was pretty harsh in my review of My Time at Sandrock, and I think it was fair. The state at which it released in was not great on the Switch. Not only did it have a lot of performance issues, but it was also overall unfinished. But I will say, over time, they have put in a lot of effort into making this better. I'll put in some footage of how it looks now compared to how it used to look, and I think the performance is better. They've also added in a lot of the content to make it equal to the PC version of the game. It's a shame it released in the state it did, because the actual game itself is fantastic. It was a farming sim that didn't feel like other farming sims, and the fact that it's fully voice acted added a lot to it. Of a similar vein, we have Harvest Moon Winds of Anthos. Now, I am always a little bit torn when it comes to Harvest Moon games. If you don't know, these aren't the original developers of Harvest Moon. They now go on to make the Story of Seasons games, and this is Natsume who make this. I will say though, despite its faults, it was really nice to see the Harvest Moon devs try something new and something different, and there were quite a lot of elements I did really enjoy about this. Like the farming, for example, seemed a lot more streamlined. I did really like a lot of the dialogue and the story that went along with it. I think the biggest downside though is they made the world absolutely massive, and it wasn't all that much fun to explore like compared to the likes of Breath of the Wild. There wasn't a lot to see as you were exploring, which kind of made the traveling feel a little bit pointless. I am really excited for what they do next though. I assume this is the start of what they're going to move on to do with the franchise. And I do really respect that they took the farming sim genre and went somewhere a little bit different with it. Then we have Dragon Quest Builders 2 with its CEX stickers still on it because it's not actually sealed. So if you don't know, CEX is a secondhand game store in the UK, and I think it's also in other parts of Europe. It's a great place to go if you want a slight discount on games, although I will say Nintendo games still tend to be pretty pricey. Oh, and by the way, if you'd like to see a video of me going into London and trying to find lots of different Switch games, let me know. I've been thinking about doing it recently, but I'm not sure if it's something you guys are interested in. But anyway, Dragon Quest Builders 2 is such a lovely game that isn't talked about enough. To me, this kind of fixed some of the issues I had when I was playing Minecraft. As sometimes in a sandbox game where you can do anything, I just feel a little bit lost, and this kind of gave me the direction I needed, taught me everything I needed to know about the game, and I had many hours of fun with this. Now, originally I played this for the first time on Game Pass, realized that I really enjoyed it and thought it'd be perfect to play in bed, which it most definitely is. And I'm fairly sure you can find it for this price, not just in a secondhand shop, but also in the eShop when it goes on sale as well. Again, thoroughly underrated and can definitely recommend picking it up. I also have Luigi's Mansion 3 physically. I think I stole this from my dad, but again, this is just Nintendo doing what Nintendo do best. This is such a fun spin on what is essentially a puzzle game, and that's kind of my favorite types of Nintendo games, is where they take a franchise or they take a type of game style and they just completely transform it into its own. I'm really excited to play Luigi's Mansion 2 when they remaster that as well. Worth the price, and it's fantastic. I feel a bit guilty about Astral Chain. I'm gonna be real, I haven't given this a good go. I tried it a little bit, but this was pretty early on into my gaming journey that I gave this a go, and I found out I was not very good at it. But I keep on hearing incredible things. People keep on telling me to give it another go, try it out. So maybe I can see if my gaming skills have improved much in the last 4 years, which I really hope they have. But from what I played, the thing I really was enjoying was the story. It seemed very close to what I loved about the Xenoblade Chronicles franchise, so I am excited to give this another good go. I don't really know how I own this, but I do own this. This is a great game. I've played it on PC. It's not a game I gravitate towards anymore. I kind of had a little spurt where I thoroughly enjoyed this and would play nothing but this. But nowadays, it's not something I play, but it's a nice game nonetheless. I made sure to get Mario RPG physically, mostly because I knew my dad would love this game, and I was right. He has been thoroughly enjoying this. And as I said, I've been trying to make more of an effort to buy things physically anyway. I did not expect to like this game as much as I did. I definitely did not expect to fall in love with all the characters and the storyline in a Mario game, because normally Mario games don't have much of a story or much character to the characters, but this has single-handedly made me fall in love with Toads. The writing for them is fantastic in this, but also the RPG mechanics themselves, really solid, really fun. There was even cute little cutscenes where the only thing that was missing was voice acting. But overall, a really fun little game. Skyward Sword is another game I need to give another go. I will say there's a lot of things I really liked about this. If you don't know, Skyward Sword is the very first game in the Zelda storyline. This basically sets up all future Zelda games, so it's definitely worthwhile even if you just go and watch the cutscenes. One thing I really loved about Skyward Sword when I played it through, admittedly I haven't finished it yet, was the cutscenes. This is the most amount of character I think I've ever seen Link have in a Zelda game. But it was also one of those storylines where you're just stood there going, and kiss. And they never do. They never do. Now, as you can see, this actually hasn't been opened yet. And that is because I just bought it yesterday. But I am looking forward to playing this. Persona 5 is one of my favorite games of all time. I've been playing Persona 3 Reloaded on my Xbox and having an absolute blast. So I can't wait to get into this. I just wanted an excuse to see some of my favorite characters again. So I'm hoping this will be a lot of fun, but this is the latest in my collection. Pikmin 4 is also pretty recent. Again, I wanted to share this with my dad, so I bought it physically. And I didn't think I'd be a Pikmin gal. I thought the games would be too stressful for me, that I wouldn't enjoy them. And it turns out I was thoroughly wrong. I adored this, and even though it was stressful at times, I didn't feel overwhelmed constantly, which meant that I found it really easy to play. And I really did enjoy the puzzles that they put into this. It managed to be really unique with all the different types of Pikmin you can use. So if you've been someone who's been debating picking this up, honestly, I think you're going to have a blast. I also have Octopath Traveler 2 physically. Again, as I said earlier, super underrated. This one is my favorite so far. The characters in this are just incredible, and the voice acting is so good. This has to be one of the best RPGs on the Switch right now. Fire Emblem Engage is another good RPG on the Switch, but it could never live up to Fire Emblem Three Houses. I'm sorry. I will say, though, there's a few things in this that I really like compared to Three Houses. The cutscenes and this overall game is absolutely gorgeous. I would go as far as to say this is one of the prettiest games on the Switch. I also really like the main character in this, because even though your character is the hero and everyone's counting on you, you don't feel like you deserve that title, and you don't feel like you deserve to be put on a pedestal by everyone else, and you're constantly fighting this. And I love the fact that it's your completely flawed hero. I think for me, I just found it so hard to get involved with each of the characters in this compared to Fire Emblem Three Houses, because there were so many of them that I just felt like this wasn't quite as good. I regret buying this. And not because the Borderlands games aren't good, they are absolutely incredible. I just wasn't a fan of the Switch controls. That might also be partly to do with the fact that I much prefer playing shooters with a mouse. But I found this a little bit rough, and I think I only have about 3 hours in it before I fully gave up. But the nice thing about it being physical is, should I want to, at least I can sell it. I genuinely think Fae Farm is one of the most controversial releases, at least of 2023. If not just fully on the Switch. People seem to either love it or hate it. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the controversy comes from the fact that it is full price Nintendo, although you do get the DLC included, but I definitely had a good time playing it. We won't know if it's fully worth the money till all the DLC comes out. If they keep on updating this game for free, I think it still has potential. It just depends how much time and effort they're willing to put in after it's released. I think this is another game I stole from my dad, because I don't remember playing it yet. But I tell you what it's made me realize that I haven't found so far, is that Mario Collection game. You know, the one Nintendo released for a limited period of time? I'm pretty sure I've got that somewhere, because that is somehow probably the rarest game in my whole collection. I really don't understand why Nintendo would limit who could buy it, but then again, Nintendo love to make things scarce that don't need to be scarce. Like Amiibo. Because they're either really expensive or I can't find the ones I want. Now, because I've moved houses 4 times since owning the Nintendo Switch, I've lost a few of the boxes because I keep all of my games in here. So here are a few of the physicals that I own, I just don't have the box for. First, we have Super Smash Bros, which I'm going to be honest, I kind of regret buying. I really love Super Smash Bros Melee, but I think that's because me and my brother used to play together after school every day, and this just didn't hold the same magic playing it by myself. I also have Mario Golf. I feel like it's sort of pointless since Switch Sports came out, because that just does this, but has a bunch of other games in it. Again, I don't find myself playing this at all. I also own the Lego Marvel Superheroes 2 game. This might be a hot take. I'm yet to play a Lego game I actually enjoy. And I'm not sure if that's because I just don't play any of the good Lego games, or if it's just me. But I always hear people raving about the Lego games, and I haven't been able to get into them. I also have Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Now, this used to be one of my favorite games on the Nintendo Switch. And then I played Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and fell in love with that even more than I did with this one. But Xenoblade Chronicles games are among the best I have ever played. And the stories always make me cry. This one's a bit more like anime-esque than Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and I found this to be a bit less hard-hitting and heavy than the Xenoblade Chronicles 3 storyline was, but fantastic nonetheless. I also own Pokemon Shield. I always have to buy whichever Pokemon my brother isn't buying. So he bought Sword, so I wound up buying Shield. This is still one of my most played Pokemon games, although I might have played Pokemon Legends Arceus now longer than I've played this. To me, this had a worse storyline than Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but I like the shiny hunting more, which means I have more hours than I do in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet in this. It's a fine Pokemon game, but the most amount of fun I had is definitely with Pokemon Legends Arceus. Now, this is the box I'm the most gutted about not currently having, and that is Animal Crossing New Horizons. One of my favorite games of all time. Definitely one of my favorite games on the Switch. Maybe not necessarily my favorite Animal Crossing game ever, but I need to figure out how much of that is to do with what age I was playing it at. Either way, I need to find a way to get my hands on the box, because this deserves to be in a box. 51 Worldwide Games. This, to me, is what Nintendo do best, as it's a great game for people who don't play games. So you can put this on, you can sit people down, and they'll have a great time with it. But the thing I love about this is it makes games super accessible, because not only is there no mess, you don't have to own the board game for them, each of the 51 games is fully explained to you. So I found a lot of cool games by doing this. I also own this WarioWare Get It Together. This is the first one, and the one that didn't use motion controls. So I kind of regretted buying this. I haven't even bought the one with motion controls yet. I need to get on that. But I was disappointed with this. I think I've played it once and that's it. It just wasn't a lot of fun. And then I also have YouTuber's Life 2, which I think is another really underrated game, honestly. This is basically like a farming sim, but instead of like making your farm better, you try and make your YouTube channel better. And honestly, this was a lot of fun playing as someone who has a YouTube channel, but also playing a game about making a YouTube channel. The humor in this is spot on. They know exactly what they're doing. This also had a free update, I think a year and a half ago, that added a ton of new content to the game as well. So if you're someone who hasn't checked it out yet, and you're into cozy games, but you don't want a cozy game like other cozy games, this is the one. Next is Mario Odyssey, which, I'm gonna be real, isn't one of my favorite games. I don't know what it is about it. I couldn't get into it. I much preferred the likes of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And this, to me, whilst I could appreciate like the visuals and the mechanics and everything like that, I just didn't find myself enjoying my time with it as much as I felt I should. I just felt like there was something missing for me that made me just not quite fall in love with it. Then we have Professor Layton, Mystery Journey. The fact that this is the only Professor Layton game that you can play on the Switch, and this is literally just a port of a mobile game, I believe, is absolutely tragic. Professor Layton games are some of my absolute favorites on the Switch. And I love their mix between genuine puzzles, but also like mind game puzzles as well. But the thing that really made it stand out is the fact that there was tons of in-game hint systems, so you never had to go to the internet to figure stuff out as well. And the crazy part about Professor Layton games was the fact that I enjoyed them, my younger brother enjoyed them, and my parents enjoyed them. So they struck a really nice balance about being difficult for everyone, but they also packed such a good story. I'm really glad one is coming eventually to the Switch, although I must admit I'm expecting it to come to the Switch too, and not the Switch. But it's such a beloved series of mine, and I'm sad that so far this is the only one you can get. This is a solid addition to the franchise though, but I just want the old school actual Professor Layton games to make a comeback. We also have the Let's Go games, where I got the Eevee version. I feel like this Pokemon gets a lot of hate, and it doesn't really deserve it. Although I thought the same about the Diamond and Pearl remakes, and people seem to really hate those. I genuinely didn't think they were that bad, but the general internet consensus seems to be that they were pretty dire. But I honestly absolutely loved the Let's Go games, although I will admit I think they were just a wee bit overpriced. The Let's Go games, though, are most definitely some of the best looking Pokemon games that are on the Switch right now. I love the fact that the Pokemon appeared on the overworld and not just random encounters. And I also absolutely adored the shiny hunting. This has a similar reason why I fell in love with it as Pokemon Arceus, I feel like. There was less focus on the battling, and the shiny hunting was so much fun. And although a lot of people complained that it was too easy to shiny hunt in the Let's Go games, I think this is a big reason why a lot of people became shiny hunters, because it's a fantastic way to get into it. It's a perfect first Pokemon game for a lot of people, but if you're someone who's played a lot of Pokemon before like I have, I found it a ton of fun. So maybe don't believe all the hate online about these. That's it for all my physical games, which means the entire rest of my collection is digital. And I thought the best place to get started is what I've been playing recently. And first up, we have Tale. Now, this is going to be by no means a full review. As of right now, the moment that I'm filming this video, I've only played about 5 hours because the game has been out less than 24 hours. But so far, what I can say is this is a truly unique, cozy experience, and that's not something I get to say often. Recently, there's been a high number of somewhat cozy games coming out that just lack a bit of character, with the dialogue just kind of coming across a little bit stale. And Tale is one of the first games in the cozy genre for a while that I felt has packed one heck of a punch when it's come to character. Now, this is described as being a crafting RPG, and I think that's a pretty good way to describe this. It essentially has the same story building that you'd expect from a classical RPG. The only difference is there's no combat at all. And instead of going out and grinding up your levels, you're grinding out resources and crafting in order to progress the story. One thing to note though, this is by no means a handholdy experience. This is more akin to the likes of Stardew Valley, where it will tell you the absolute basics, and then it will just leave you to figure things out. And I most definitely had a few moments in time where I was, definitely figuring things out. So basically just expect to maybe have to go look a few things up if you get really stuck. But overall, after 5 hours, I've been enjoying it. I think my overall opinion on the game is going to depend on how grindy it becomes. But for £20, I've really been enjoying the story so far. The Watermelon game is also one of my most recently played games, and that is because they introduced a brand new versus mode. Now, I already have a solid like 30 plus hours in this game so far. This is one of the best value for money games I have ever bought on my Switch. And I love the fact that they released paid DLC so that I can, you know, rekindle my problem. Then we have Sky Children of the Light. I keep on coming back to this. It's just a really joyful experience. I love the fact that they do different seasons to bring you back for more. It truly is something I really enjoy. Then we have Panorama, which I've been playing a bit of recently. It is very similar to Doth Romantic, but different enough that it kind of keeps me coming back for more. But I will admit, I much prefer playing this on PC rather than the Switch version. The controls for controller just aren't as good as Doth Romantic's are. We also have the classic Xenoblade Chronicles 3, one of my favorite games of all time. I finished this well over a year ago, but I finally decided that I'm going to knuckle down and try and get through the DLC. If you've played Xenoblade Chronicles 3, you might already know why I've been delaying the DLC experience. It's meant to be really good, but I've been finding it really hard to look these guys in the eyes again. I did pick up the amiibo for them though recently, and I'm just in love. I can't wait to display them. Another code, I believe I have bought the full game of this, but I just haven't really got around to playing it. I know it has a really slow start, so I'm kind of gearing myself up for it, but it is something I need to get into. Now, Palia, I do have this on here, but I'm going to be honest, I don't play it at all really anymore. I went in, I got my collectibles for the Switch version, and then I've been playing the PC version ever since. I think by the time it comes out on Steam and I can play it on the Steam Deck, I'm just going to fully uninstall it on my Switch. As much as I'd love to play it in bed, the Switch port at the moment is just too rough for me to enjoy. It gives me a headache, it makes me feel motion sick because it can't hold 30 FPS. A bit of a letdown. One thing I do want to look into is seeing if I can buy any of my top 10 favorite games physically and not just owning them digitally. Like Spiritfarer, for example, again, one of my favorite indie games of all time. I haven't played many games that have moved me the same way Spiritfarer has. And I love this mix between having classical, cozy mechanics, but also a gameplay loop that's around you getting to know characters and then ultimately needing to say goodbye to them. It truly is such a beautiful experience. Star Ocean, the second story R, I need to get physically. I bought that when it was Farmageddon, that kind of 2-month period where everything that was being released seemed to be a farming sim, and I was just in desperate need of an RPG with a decent story, and wound up finding one of my favorite RPGs ever by accident. Has so much charm, the story's great, can't recommend it enough. Dave the Diver is another game that needs a physical release. I need a box for this. This is truly the game that made me realize that roguelikes could be so much fun. And also, I really enjoyed the restaurant management side of things. Honestly, I'd take a game that is just that in the future as well. I wish I'd bought Detective Pikachu physical, because then I could have returned it. I did not like that game whatsoever. The Cosmic Wheeler Sisterhood, another game I wish I could buy physically. I need to look it up. This to me is a narrative experience that truly stands out compared to literally everything else. Your character basically stays in the same room for the entire game, and yet the world building through conversation is phenomenal, and I love the way that you pull tarot cards in order to influence the future and which outcome you get of the entire game. Pokemon Legends Arceus, probably my favourite Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch. Not only is this one of my favourite Pokemon games of all time, it's also the one I have the most amount of hours in, and that's just because the catching mechanics, the exploration, is just so much fun. And if I'm in the mood to shiny hunt, this is the game I go to. I think also for me, battling is not something I really enjoy in Pokemon games as much as all the other elements, so I love the fact that you don't have to battle nearly as much in this as you do with other Pokemon games, and I really hope another Legends game is on its way. Vemba was such a special game, and Wildflowers, I need to see if that's had a physical run at all. Both of these excel at storytelling in a completely different way, like Vemba explores this through making food, and Wildflowers is a farming sim that doesn't really focus on the farming so much as the experience. Dordogne as well, beautiful, wouldn't mind picking that up physically. Smushy Come Home was just such a fun little game, and I believe there's a free content update coming sometime in the future as well. Dorf Romantic, still one of my favourite puzzle games to play, such a great way to pass the time. Now there are a few games here that I haven't played enough of to really give an opinion, but they are on my to play list. For example, Song of Nunu, a League of Legends story. I had quite a lot of fun playing this at first, but I've barely got into it at all. The same goes for Spirit Tea. I've been trying to get into it, but I haven't really succeeded much so far. I need to give it another good go. Spells and Secrets is a game I need to circle back to. When I first picked this up, the Switch port was one of the worst ports I think I've seen in a long time. So it'll be interesting to see if they fixed it at all. We also have Roots of Pacha. Now this has to be one of my favourite farming sims that has come out recently, just because it felt so different. It has all your classic farming sim tropes, but spun in a way that no other farming sim has kind of done it, and for that reason, I really enjoyed my time with it. Then we have A Little to the Left, which has to be one of my favourite puzzle games that's come out on the Switch. And if we're talking about a game I've spent a lot of hours in, but I don't talk all that much about, it is Good Pizza, Great Pizza. Now, I will admit I split my time between playing the Switch version and the iPad version, as I much prefer playing with the touch controls versus playing with the controller, but it's such a fun little game to pass the time. I feel like a lot of people don't talk about it, and I want more restaurant sim games in my life, as it's something I absolutely love doing. Fashion Dreamer is a game that is most definitely overpriced, but it is fun to dive into every now and again for short bursts. I also have a bunch of the Story of Seasons games. My favourite is most definitely Story of Seasons Friends of Mineral Town. I also have Pioneers of Olive Town, but I wasn't really a big fan of that. It just kind of felt really awkward in its farming sim mechanics, and I didn't really feel like I was doing much in the game. I was just watching things happen. And then Story of Seasons A Wonderful Life is probably a game I am okay with. I really like the idea where time would pass year on year. I just wish they kind of modernized it a little bit more. And then we have the graveyard of games that aren't even downloaded on my Switch. And this is a real mix between games I loved and finished and games that I haven't picked up in a very long time. Like Beacon Pines, for example, one of my favorite indie games of all time. This is a creepy adventure that follows Luca and his friends who start investigating the strange happenings in his town. The thing is, it's not just strange, it's outright dangerous, with nearly all of your decisions in the game leading to disaster. So it's up to you to explore the different paths in the story and try and get to the happy ending. I love the way that you control the stories through different charms that you collect as you go. This means that even if you go down a story that has an unhappy ending, you can pick up a brand new charm that you can use at other branches and hopefully have a better outcome. Bayonetta Origins, loved the art style, hated the fact that for £40 the game was like 10 hours long. Disney Dreamlight Valley, I've been playing it a bit on PC, haven't really touched it on the Switch still. It's still a bit rough. Harvestella is another game I want to see if they did a physical release of. I genuinely think if Harvestella had cutscenes the way Xenoblade Chronicles does cutscenes, it could have been in my top 5 games of all time. The story is actually really, really strong. It's just delivered in such a boring way, but the way the game meshes together being an RPG but also a farming sim led to some really nice gameplay. Farming had a purpose, as you would make food that you would then cook into different meals to help you with the big boss fights, and I loved having farming sim mechanics alongside a really strong story. We also have Mario Kart 8, which I've just seen here, which I actually own the physical of. The wild part about Mario Kart is the fact that it is the best-selling Nintendo Switch game of all time, but it's literally a port just from the Wii U version where they added some added DLC, and Nintendo never made a sequel to that where they could have cashed in even more. Either way, it's like the only racing game I play. People always underestimate how good I am at it, but that's for good reason. This used to be my comfort game. It makes zero sense why Mario Kart would be a comfort game, but to me, whenever I used to be stressed at uni, I always used to pick it up, and now I'm fairly decent at it. I also love the Mario Parties, especially Mario Party Superstars. That's another great game for people who aren't necessarily gamers. Like, you can get together, a group of 4 of you, and because of the bonus stars, you never quite know who's going to win. Then we have Mario Strikers, which is the worst first-party Nintendo Switch game, and honestly, one of the biggest regrets I have about buying it. I've played it once, and I didn't even enjoy it much that once either. No Man's Sky is another one of my favorites. I always undownload it after I've come back from holiday because it's like a travel game for me, because I mostly play it on the PC when I'm at home. But if I'm going on a long journey, I'll always re-download it because it's a great go-to, and it's a game that if you need to put it down at any moment, you can, and you can pick it back up and know exactly what you're doing. Ooblets is another game I need to see if I can get it physical. It's one of my favorite indies. It has so much charm. I'm going to be honest though, I play it more on my Steam Deck, but that's not because it runs better. That's because I have more gleamies in that save file, so I started playing that one more. Persona 5, we all know I love it. It's another game I need to try and get physically because it's a favorite. And Stardew Valley I kind of want to pick up as a physical as well. I've seen it in CEX. I just haven't bought it yet because it's like double or triple the price that you could get it on the eShop, which I think is the main issue about getting into collecting games. Some of them are not cheap. Triangle Strategy, I think I bought it on sale. I really need to try harder to get into it. I feel like it has the potential to be incredible. I just haven't given it a good go. That's more or less it for my entire collection. If you are a collector, let me know in the comments down below why you love collecting physical games. This is a world I'm just getting into, but I'd love to know why you guys love it so much. And if you want to see my top 10 games on the Nintendo Switch ever, click this video here.